2 years ago, before the 25th, yeah. But JD was using some of my footage. I can't find my stuff from 1990, but I got it, but I just couldn't find 1999 up to 2013, I've got it.
Why did you find it?
Because I mislabeled it. I've found the tapes, I gotta go through them now.
Tapes, I think you...
I got tapes. I know, you would think, but I got too much else on my plate.
Thank you, George.
Don't do it.
You certainly may. I'm Catherine. You're welcome,
know whether Bob Stigman planned to introduce me, but he's got so many things going at once here. If he had planned to it, I'm saving him some trouble. My name is Mike Nevins, and the reason they invited me out here this year is because earlier in the year I did a book called They Called the Shots, which is a book about the directors that I knew and their colleagues and contemporaries who specialized in Western and action films, first in theaters, and then when that kind of movie was displaced by television, most of them who were too young to retire went into TV. The longest chapter, and the subject of the chapter being the director I knew the longest and the best, is Bill Whitney. And Bill's son JD and I are going to be doing a panel on him tomorrow. So he is not included in the material I prepared on this DVD. I have a 2-hour Best of Bill Whitney DVD. If they need it, if we need it tomorrow, we'll have it. But one of the other directors that I knew quite well, who is also the subject of one of the articles in the Lone Pine Annual Film Magazine. If you've gotten that, you've probably seen they did a great job with all sorts of photographs that I don't have, was a director named Spencer Bennett. Have any of you, if you've heard of Spencer Bennett, raise your hands. Yes, Spence. I met him, I guess it was in the late 70s. We discovered that he was born exactly 50 years and 1 day before me. I could never forget to call him on his birthday. And as we got to know each other well, we made a deal that when I turned 50 and he turned 100, we would have a 48-hour party. I'm afraid he broke the deal. He died at age 94. But he was a very healthy man. He was a physical fitness kind of a person. And there are all sorts of stories about Spence and quotations from the letters he sent me and things he said when we were on radio together, which are in my chapter on Spence in They Called the Shots. You'll learn a great deal about Spence. Most of it, a good bit of it, is also, as I say, with a whole bunch of photographs that I don't have, in the Lone Pine magazine. An amazing person. His specialty was fooling your eyes, trick shots, 3D effects before there was such a thing as 3D. And his films are full of amazing shots. Not every one of them, but the best of them. And because we don't have a huge amount of time here, and Bob said that I had to save time for questions and answers, I'm going to concentrate on the clips that Spence directed. And if we have a little more time, several of the other clips here were shot in Lone Pine, and we can run some of them. The first one, you'll see at the top of the screen, Lawless Riders. This is a movie Spence made apparently in Lone Pine, 1935, with Ken Maynard. And you'll see what I mean by unusual shots. There's not a word of dialogue in this sequence, and the stunts are absolutely amazing. You'll see one shot where Harry Woods and his gang are chasing the stagecoach, and they've shot the driver, and the coach is running away. There's a woman inside the coach, and Harry Woods rides up to the window of the coach and pulls down the strongbox. and you see it from the woman's point of view. Spence needed that because later on she identifies Woods as the head of the gang. That's why that shot is there. And then you'll see some other stuff. It goes on and on for maybe 5 minutes or so without a word of dialogue. Whoops. So I'm going to get out of the way. I don't want to block the image. JD?
You could actually scoot over a little bit.
Okay.
Because I gotta get in.
Oh, okay. Put me where you want me. You're the director.
I learned how to use,
Bill taught this guy.
I learned how to use this 5 minutes ago, so you gotta bear with me.
Here comes that shot. Never seen a shot like that in any other Western. stop it, JD. Yeah, see, okay, it works. That's an example of Spencer Bennett at his best. But it's not the only kind of thing Spencer did. We're now going to flash forward a few years to 1939.
Which one are we going to?
Riders of the Frontier. This is a sequence, there has never been a sequence like this in a B Western. The Texas Buddy in this one is the only serious black sidekick in a B Western. And there are a few feet studio stuff stereotype black sidekicks, but this guy is the real thing, and he and Tex harmonize together, and then there's an evil character on the trail drive that is trying to get Tex into a fight, and you'll see what he does. The scene is silent, but you can almost hear him snarl the N-word as he trips up the black sidekick, and then Tex defends his friend. This may or may not have been shot in Lone Pine.
Well, this will soon be over. We ought to hit Galeville sometime tomorrow.
Yep. We haven't lost a steer on the way.
I do with that. Suppose you play us a piece while I go get y'all something to eat.
Well, I'm not hungry.
All I want is a cup of coffee.
Hey, Chappie,
Sir,
where'd you ever get a good-looking guitar like this?
the bird bought me that for Christmas.
Oh.
That's Owen
Hey,
Francis.
believe I'll take a cup of coffee myself.
Make it yeller.
Go ahead. Make it yellow. Color don't make any difference. Take you, for instance, Chappie. Your skin's dark, but your heart ain't all shriveled up like somebody I know.
Sure enough.
You see, Chappie, it's like this. Some people are like your guitar. Empty heads. Born with a discord. Others are decent and fine. In harmony with the world.
You sure do know the human race. And music, too.
Thanks, Chappie. Say, how'd you ever get the name of Chappie?
Well, you see, Miss Ed, it's like this. Everybody in our family is named after somebody in the good book. So the first name they come to is chapter 1. That's me. Chappie for sure.
You got any brothers or sisters?
Yes, sir. We are nearly up to the 12 apostles right now. The last report.
Say, Chappie, as we rode up a while ago, I heard you playing the Boll Weevil song. The Boll Weevil. You like that?
Yes, sir. That's my favorite. Look at you. Miss Ed, do you like it?
Let's go.
For the boll weevil lamb, a little black bug from Mexico, they say, come all the way to Texas, just looking for a place to stay, just looking for a home, just looking for a home. Now the first time I see the boll weevil, he was sitting on the square. The next time I see the boll weevil, he had all his family there, just looking for a home, just looking for a home.
Now the farmer taking the boll weevil, and he put him in the hot sand. The weevil said, this is mighty hot, but I'll stand it like a man. This'll be my home. It'll be my home. Now the farmer takes this boll weevil and puts him in a lump of ice. The boll weevil said to the farmer, this is mighty cool and nice. It'll be my home. This'll be my home.
The farmer said to the weevil, What makes your head so red? The weevil say to the farmer,
It's the wonder I been looking for home.
looking for a home,
Just looking for home.
Now the merchant got half the cotton, the boll weevil got the rest.
He did.
And he leaves the farmer's wife with one old cotton dress, and it's full of holes. It's full of holes.
Now the farmer said to the merchant, we is in an awful fix. The boll weevil ate up all the cotton and left us on his stick. We got no home.
Got no home,
We got no home.
And the captain say to the missus, what do you think of that? The boll weevil done made a nest in my best Sunday hat. Gonna have a home. Gonna have a home.
Now if anybody should ask you who it was that made this song, just tell them 'twas a dark complected fella with a pair of blue ducky thorn. They got no home.
Got no home.
They got no home.
And the boll weevil say to the farmer, you better leave me alone. I done ate all your cotton and now I'm gonna start on your corn.
No lane here to stop you now.
Freely effect.
That boll weevil is done found a home.
That's the end of that one. I saw an interview with the female star of this picture who later married Tex Ritter, and she said this was not appreciated down south in 1939, and there was never another picture like that. That was Spence once again. He continued to direct Tex Ritter pictures for a few years. The next one, which is Riding the Cherokee Trail, I have two scenes from that. This one, these scenes are indoors. The first scene it's a wonderful duel between high culture and popular culture. Tex is the undercover lawman who's gone into the area where the law can't go to root out this intellectual criminal and his gang. This man is an intellectual. He has a signature tune, the Moonlight Sonata, which we hear him play. He loves opera. And the scene basically, Tex is meeting him, and they have a duel about classical music and opera versus cowboy music. And again, I don't think there's another scene like this anywhere in a Western. And then this is followed up by a scene about chess. I remember seeing this scene 60 odd years ago. Oh, here we go. Here's this Moonlight Sonata. And the guy is an intellectual, so we get artistic shots.
Dutch here, Mr. Quayle, and them two galops. Do you want to see them?
Yes. How's that? When I drop my handkerchief, you know what to do.
happened to you?
Well, it took a little fussing to bring him around.
Quite a little fussing, I'd say. You don't look much the worse for the argument.
All right. Do whatever you're gonna do and let's get it over with.
Not a bad idea. I want to talk with our impatient friend. Take the skinny one out of here. So you gave Dirk Fargo a lacing, did you? I'd like to have seen it. But there's no excuse for that, you understand? Well, I don't appreciate having my men shot at and beaten up by strangers. Have a cigar? My own blend. Imported all the way from Virginia.
No thanks.
What's your business in the Cherokee Strip, anyway?
Oh, nothing. Taking a little vacation, maybe.
Vacation? Away from the Rangers, eh?
What do you mean by that?
Don't be loud. Is wanted somewhere by the law. By the way, what's your name?
Tex Riley. That's good as any. See, in my business, you have to be pretty careful about names. You don't know it, but down along the border where I come from, there's not an outlaw or a ranger that hasn't heard of it sometime or other.
Say, you're not one of the fellows who staged that big bank robbery in Rock Creek, are you?
I don't know why. I didn't rob the bank, but I got the money from the hombres that did.
Good work. Good work. I haven't done so bad myself, you know.
Well, from looking at this place, I'd say you've done pretty good. Not bad. Not bad at all. Oh, well. Well, you keep up with the times. So you got one of these newfangled contraptions.
It's called a gramophone. Invented by a young fellow back in New Jersey named Edison. The very latest thing.
Yeah, I like to hear it.
Do you like music?
Sure do. Do you?
Yes. Music is part of my life. Good music. Not trash, like that squeaky yodeling these cowboys call music.
Oh, I don't know. I kind of like cowboy music myself.
I wouldn't admit it. You can't even compare the two. Listen to this. That's Rigoletto. Rigoletto.
No, that's a cowboy song. Old Bandit Pete's the name of it.
That's La Donna Mobile from Rigoletto, Italian opera.
Ain't the way I heard it.
Old Pete the bandit, oh, held up the sheriff, oh. Petey-O said, oh, oh. Sheriff-O said, no, no, no. Sheriff-O said, let's go down to the jail-o. Petey-O said, no. The jail-o no go.
Both the same. I'll bet you that Galoot Rigoletto stole it from the cowboys.
That was an accident.
Got any more?
Over here. See what you can do with this.
Well, that's a cinch. I wrote that one myself.
You did?
Yeah. That's Pete the Bandit.
But you just sang that over there.
No. That was old Bandit Pete over there.
Oh. Let's hear it.
Oh, Pete the Bandit robbed the grocery store, smashed in the window, tore down the door. Poor Pete, he's hung, he's strung. Poor Pete.
You're all right, Tex. You almost convinced me.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. I think I'm going to like you. You know, you're not like these other mavericks around here. You've got brains like I have. You know, I could use a man like you.
Now comes the chess scene. More about brains.
I knew I could count on you. Sit down. Play chess?
Oh, thanks. Never was very good at parlor games.
This is no power game. Not the way I play it. My game is with living men.
Don't get you.
This represents my army, with me directing every move.
That bird sure took over your job with Craven in a hurry.
Yeah? Nobody's riding herd on my job and getting away with it. Give me that. What'd I tell you about taking that watch?
Oh, I was only having a little fun.
We're all ready to strike tomorrow. And I have a great honor for you. You are to lead the raiding party.
Me?
Yes. You'll camp tonight at Shady Oaks. And since you're so fond of cowboy music, I'll arrange to have the Tennessee Ramblers meet you there.
Well, that's fine, but I always thought you led your men personally.
No. My place is here. The guiding hand. The brains.
That's funny. I had you figured out as the kind of a man that was always in the thick of things. The way people talked,
People talked. How about me? What did they say?
Oh, nothing. This story's a wreck.
Never mind that. What did they say?
Oh, things like, how you burn the wind when you ride. With a reputation like that, if I was in your shoes, they couldn't keep me from being out there. Cashing in on all that glory.
Glory. I wonder. That bank job in Rocky Ford is pretty important. Maybe I should go along, just in case. Yes.
Watch this cut.
Just in case. And I'll tell my men.
We have a long ride ahead of us. Now, you men have your orders, and I don't want any slip-ups. Is that clear?
Yeah. Right.
Amazing scenes. Only in this picture. You'll find all of these described in the chapter on Spence in my book and also in the article in the Lone Pine magazine. I have one more from around the same time, 1941. This was when Spence was directing a new series called The Rough Riders, Buck Jones and Tim McCoy. And Gunman from Bodie is the second picture in that series. You see it there, J.D.?
Where is it?
1, 2, 3,
Oh, there it
4.
is.
Gunman
Okay.
from Bodie. In these scenes, there are two scenes. We see Spence and his lighting effects. First, a scene with Buck Jones as he discovers a murdered couple, and then later on, Tim McCoy as he encounters one of the murderers. Very short scenes. There's a sequence between them, which is just sort of a talking head sequence, which my technicians decided to leave in because it would have been too much trouble to cut it out. So I'll talk over that while we're waiting for the second of the two sequences.
You'll be all right, Silver. I'll see if the folks mind. Hello there. Anybody home?
Okay, now comes the talking head sequence, which we don't, I think.
Seen Wyatt around?
No?
Give me a drink.
What are you burning about?
Plenty.
This is Tim McCoy.
Wyatt been in here tonight?
No, haven't seen him.
So you're the guy that's going to bring law and order to Larrabee.
That's right.
Well, you ain't starting out so good, are you? Letting Bill Cook run out on you.
You seem to know a lot about Cook, don't you? Maybe some of the things I want to know. Well, you can tell them to me down at the jail, because that's where you're going right now.
Oh, no,
Get out of the way. I'm taking my share now. The marshal's after me. Well, wait a minute, Steve. I ain't waiting for nobody. Put out that light.
I was
Light
wrong.
that light.
They did cut out the talking talking heads. Look at this shot now. Great stuff. Well, that's the clips from Spence Burnett that I put on this. An amazing guy. He, as I say, he lived to be 94 years old. He remained in excellent health until he was about 90. He was still playing golf, squash, and handball. I remember once, and he would have been in his late 80s at this time, I had a deal in San Francisco, and I was flying back to St. Louis, but I routed myself through LA so that I could have lunch with Spence. Unfortunately, I picked up a case of flu or something like that when I was in San Francisco, but I wasn't going to let that stop me. And I flew down, and Spence picked me up, and he had one of these little Instamatic cameras in his car, and we took pictures of each other. Remember, he was born 50 years and one day before me. He looked better in that picture than I did. He had a very, very long, happy marriage. Then his wife died, and my wife died 5 years ago. I know exactly. I have walked in his moccasins. He began to lose it, and eventually he had to be, well, first they hired a houseman for him, and I would call every so often and ask the houseman how he was doing, and then the houseman would get Spence on the phone, and each conversation was more difficult. At first he seemed to know who I was, and then as our conversation went on, he stopped calling me Mike. He began calling me Bill. I think he thought I was Bill Whitney, J.D.'s father. And then perhaps later on, he would start calling me father. Whether he thought I was his biological father or a priest, I will never know. Well, eventually his daughter had to put him into a nursing home. And that was where I saw him for the last time, in his 94th birthday. So I can tell you the exact date, January 5th, 1987. And I was in LA on a deal, and they were having a little party for him at the nursing home in Santa Monica, I think it was. His daughter and her husband picked me up at my hotel, and we drove out there, and that was the party. The three of us and one great-grandson of Spencer who came roaring into the grounds on his motorcycle. And we were the birthday party. And they wheeled Spence into the room. He was unable to walk by this point. His weight was down to like 100 pounds. There seemed to be permanent tear tracks under his eyes, and he didn't say a word. And that was a rough birthday party. He died later that year. I don't think that sequence got into the Lone Pine magazine. They had to cut some from the chapter in the book. So if you buy both, you can read it all. Well, we still have time, I think. Oh yeah, we have time for a few more sequences. Let's, as I say, nothing on this DVD represents Bill Whitney. But Bill Whitney's best bud when they were at Republic, his co-director, was a very fine director named John English. I'm sure many of you have heard of John English. And we're going to run a sequence. This is the very beginning of a movie with Bill Elliott called Death Valley Manhunt. And in this sequence, John English gleefully gives away the secret of every runaway stagecoach scene you have ever seen in a Western. He just gives it away in this marvelous scene. And this is the beginning of the picture, which means he has to outdo himself to top it at the climax. I don't have the climax here, but I have the beginning scene, and I'll leave you to imagine how powerful and full of action the climax of this picture is. J.D., Death Valley Manhunt, please. Bill Elliott and Gabby Hayes. There we go. This is the very beginning of the movie. '43 is the date.
The year you were born, Mike.
Yep. I did not see this when it first came out.
Well, pretty rough trip, eh, T-Bone? There you go again. You know what that does to me. I settled it. I'm going to give you to the first sheep herder I meet.
Don Red Bear.
These are the sequences that 60 years and more ago I first saw. They stuck in my mind. Little did I know back then that the time would come when we could have copies of these films in our homes. It sort of makes me understand what it was like when books first became available, when Gutenberg invented the printing press. And I have been fortunate enough, and most of you too, I think, to have lived in that era. When you were young, you went to movies to see, went to movie theaters to see these films and never dreamed you could see them in your home the way you could get a book and read it in your home. And now we all take it for granted. We can see these things on our computers, on our smartphones. We have lived in amazing times. Do we have time for, well, let's end on a high note. Turn the lights back on. We have time for some questions and answers, and anything else that comes into our heads. John English, who directed that last sequence, if you're familiar with Republic serials, you know, for 5 years, that director credit was on every one of them, directed by William Whitney and John English. They were great buddies. Bill frequently said that John English's style as a director was so much like Bill's that sometimes they'd get into fights about who directed what sequences when they were directing something together.
They wouldn't let him do the fire sequence.
I never got to meet John English. He died in 1969 and never got to attend any of the film festivals that have become so common since his death. I'm sure he would have loved them. Over the years, of course, I've gotten to meet not a huge number, but a select number of the people that specialized in directing this kind of movie. And there are chapters on them, on all the ones who I think are worth writing about, remembering, and trying to do justice to as directors and as human beings. And there will be copies of my book. We're doing a signing right after we're through here. Does anybody have any questions about any of the materials that we've run here today, or about any other directors of Western and action films whose names may be in your minds and memories? Yes, a question?
For myself, I was wondering, you didn't include Al Rogel in your book? I know there's in the...
No, Rogel didn't get into the book. He really, he directed a few silent westerns, like with Ken Maynard.
Right.
Never really directed this kind of picture in the talking era. Later on, he was one of the directors on the Broken Arrow TV series, I know, which I watched that as a kid. I must say it didn't turn me on particularly, but Michael Ansara, he was a great cochise, and a couple of years later, he starred solo in a series I think was far better than Broken Arrow. It was not a success. It's a series, anybody remember Law of the Plainsman? And Sarah, he played a full-blooded Apache, Harvard-educated U.S. Marshal. And one of my best friends from Hollywood, who was also not in the book, Paul Landris, directed a bunch of them. Paul was a fantastic director. I did a book about him, which came out about a year before he died. That is a powerful series. And Sarah had such a voice. He had moral authority in that voice. And especially when you got into a story where, because he is an Apache, he is spat upon in one way or another. Paul directed some great episodes where this happens. And I remember there's one that I love where these racist outlaws capture Ansara. And, well, you're riding across our land. Who has better right? It's his people's land, of course. Uh,
I got
sorry.
a little trivia. My recollection as a kid was that Michael Ansara was married to Barbara Eden from I Dream of Jeannie.
Yes, that is correct.
And the reason I remember that was I grew up in Arcadia, California, and the two of them bought the bowling alley right down the street from my elementary school and appeared when they opened that thing up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's he was a great TV actor.
Yeah, and he was not a Native American. He was Lebanese. But he was the best thing the Native Americans had on the TV screen at that time. Question here.
Not a question, but just to add to that, if you've ever seen the series Centennial, the beginnings of
Yeah.
the first 2 chapters, which are like 4 hours long,
Right.
Michael Ansara again carries the whole thing.
Yeah. From the perspective of somebody who was a teen when I was a teen and when many of you were teens, he had one of the great TV Western voices, matched, I think, only by Richard Boone. And I'm so happy that I've lived long enough to find Have Gun Will Travel on DVD. I remember one episode from the first season. There's not a great deal of action in it. It's all a duel of voices between Boone and the mad wagon master played by Grant Withers, who wants to kill this woman for religious reasons. And they have an oratorical duel. You could do that on television. I don't know if you could do duels like that in feature films. But I was lucky enough, when my parents bought their first set, it was 1952, I was 9, and the Westerns were Hoppy, Gene, Roy, Range Rider, Kit Carson, etc. But within a few years, Gunsmoke and Wyatt Earp and Cheyenne came in, and I was just at the right age to ride into the adult Western without any sense of culture shock or anything like that. It was a good time, if you're interested in TV Westerns, to have spanned the original kind, which were related to the theatrical B-Westerns, and the so-called adult Westerns, which usually did not have a great deal of action, but had a lot more dramatic conflict and adult storylines, and some great Western psychos. One of them, I'll tell you a story about one of the great Western psycho actors. His name was John Anderson. And the reason I know a bit about him is because one of my colleagues on the St. Louis University law faculty was a boyhood buddy of John Anderson's. They both grew up in Quincy, Illinois. And I remember once I walked into Joe's office and there's a picture of John Anderson on the wall. And I said, "Did you know John Anderson?" "Yeah, we were great buddies in grammar school." And so I began getting into the habit of bringing DVDs where Anderson is a psycho, and I would play them on my computer for Joe on Saturday mornings down there. He was amazing. He was in a lot of episodes of The Rifleman. He was in Have Gun. He was in Gunsmoke. Joe Lewis, Joseph H. Lewis, the great director who did 51 episodes of The Rifleman, he just loved John Anderson. He said that man would not stop acting. And he wasn't really like that, but he came across as just so sadistic and psychotic. There is an episode of Gunsmoke called Buffalo Man, where Anderson captures Jim Arness and ties him to a wagon wheel and then kicks him in the face and leaves him to be tortured and scalped by the Indians in the territory. Well, Matt gets his revenge at the end, and that's an episode of an adult Western that has plenty of action. But Anderson, no one could be a Western psycho like Anderson could be a Western psycho. I never got to meet him, unfortunately, but I shook the hand that shook the hand, so to speak. Questions? Yes.
I'm wondering if you have any remarks on the early all-black westerns.
About who?
The early
They're
black
all
westerns?
Black westerns.
Harlem Rides the Range?
No, there were only a couple of them. And they were, of course, designed for segregated theaters in the South. I've watched a couple on television. They're sort of nothing pictures, but because of the explosion of all interest in all types of black film, many, many people have seen them that probably never saw Buck Jones or Wild Bill Elliott. Actually, one of the guys that worked on a couple of these pictures, a director, he gets a chapter in the book. His name is Sam Newfield. An amazing person. He directed 225 features in something like 25 years. And most of them are nothing pictures. He directed almost every Western that the PRC Pictures Company put out. So many that he had to use 2 pseudonyms. Peter Stewart, and the other one is escaping my memory for the moment. But I never met him or anything. He was, I don't know how he could do it. I don't know when he slept. And nobody really has much great to say about Sam Newfield. I have a chapter on him. I do have something good to say, and JD, maybe we could do we have time for one more clip, a very short one. I remember this again from 60-odd years ago. There was, Tim McCoy grew up in Saginaw, Michigan, and I got invited. They were naming a stretch of highway after Tim McCoy, and they needed a speaker. And Tim was dead by this point. His sons were alive, but they were tied up. He had a nephew whom I knew. He was a graduate of my St. Louis University Law School where I taught, and they wanted him, but he was in trial. He was a practicing lawyer, and so he passed the buck to me. And I said, yeah, I'll come up. And I put together some clips of Tim in various capacities. For example, Tim was known as a passionate advocate for the Native American. And there's a great movie called The End of the Trail, where this is 1932, and Tim gives this amazing speech. Basically, it's a speech to the audience about how the white men have treated the Indians for generations. I used that. I don't have that here. But another one I used, and it's quite short, is Tim McCoy as sort of a force of nature. And that is from The Phantom Ranger. It's a very short clip. It's directed by Sam Newfield. It makes your eyes bug out if you've seen the dozens and dozens of absolutely routine, nothing pictures that Newfield directed. Tim McCoy is chasing the outlaw leader and drives him up a cliff to his death with great background music, unusual shots. What you like to find in these Westerns, what you do find in some of the best Westerns of the best directors, in Sam Newfield, virtually never, except here. But what do they say? Even a stop clock is right twice a day.
been a long trail, Shark, but you've come to the end of it. I'm arresting you for counterfeiting and murder.
Well, that shows you what this man, Sam Newfield, might have done with his career if he had chosen quality over quantity. Once in a rare while, he outdid himself. And this thing, Eisenhower was in the White House when I first saw it. Here we are, 60-odd years later, and we're still watching it. This is the kind of sequence that I've run here today is the kind of sequence that got me real